Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition on If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking. I am your host, Archie Mitchell. This is my show, and we are back for another exciting week, only this time we have a little extra. That's right, we've got a lot to talk about this week because not only will we be doing the quick hits, but we will be reviewing AEW Rampage from this past Friday night last week because we are being broadcasted on Friday evening at 7 p.m. here on WrestleNet Radio. But not only Rampage, but NXT and AEW Dynamite. And I will be letting you know what to expect next week here on If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking. But instead of wasting any more time, let's jump right into it. Crack open your favorite frosty beverage, and let's get into some quick hits. Quick hit number one, John Cena and Roman Reigns' promo from last Friday night on SmackDown. Um, Roman Reigns was on fire as usual, delivering his very talking down to promo, trying to let John Cena know if it wasn't for Roman Reigns, John Cena wouldn't be relevant. But John Cena came back and just kept prodding Roman Reigns through this entire vignette promo moment on SmackDown. Cena mentioned that he only has to outlast Roman Reigns for 1, 2, 3. He mentioned Seth Rollins. He mentioned Roman Reigns running Dean Ambrose out of the WWE. It was absolutely perfect for these two men. Better than the last time that they jousted a few years back when these two had a program together. So much better. These guys really went after each other, and it was incredible to see. I hope that all of these promos and this back and forth translates into an excellent match at SummerSlam this Saturday. Tomorrow, actually. Um, yeah, tomorrow is SummerSlam. So I hope that these two men put on a fantastic match for the Universal title. And I'm just hoping that it means that we are back to a more sturdy WWE with really good storylines as opposed to the constant back and forth of good storyline, bad storyline. Yeah, kill the good storyline. Let's do a couple more bad ones. Number two, Ric Flair appears in Mexico at Triple Mania for Triple A. Unbelievable. Ric Flair accompanies Andrade El Idolo to the ring for his world title matchup, his mega title matchup with Kenny Omega, who had Conan in his corner, which made no sense because Conan has been very diligent in saying that he doesn't like Kenny holding the AAA title. So it really made no sense, but I guess that was to combat Flair. Omega went over in the match, which reports say that it was supposed to be Andrade who went over, but because of other factors that went on before this matchup, um, AEW asked them to allow Kenny to go over here. No big deal. Flair got in, gave a couple top chops to Conan, a belt shot to Kenny, and even applied a figure four to K Dog. It was great seeing Rick back in the ring and doing what he does. It'll be interesting to see if this leads him to either Impact, NWA, or AEW. But whatever the case may be, the Nature Boy is still styling and profiling. And number three, the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, come face to face with their former Bullet Club brethren, the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tongalo. Seeing this on New Japan for their resurgence show that they had here in the States was unbelievable. Bullet Club past coming face to face with Bullet Club future. Guys who have known each other so well, have been intertwined with one another. Tama Tonga has said on multiple times that he and Carl Anderson are the best of friends. But at this show, because the Good Brothers back Kenny Omega and the Elite, they finally came to blows. They finally came to face. The Forbidden Door is now completely busted wide open by New Japan. And I have a feeling that we're going to see the Gorillas of Destiny on Impact and wrestling for those World Tag Team titles. Whatever the case may be, I want to see it. I love the Gorillas of Destiny. I love the Good Brothers, the Bullet Club for life. If it comes here to the States, If it ends up in Impact, it will end up in AEW. We could see a full-on Bullet Club war between the Elite and the Bullet Club led by Tamatanga and King Switch Jay White. So that's going to do it for the quick hits. Not much going on, but a lot going on, as you can see. And that will bring us to our review of AEW Rampage, the debut episode from last Friday night. There will be another episode later on this evening because it is Friday after SmackDown. So we'll get into that and all that occurred on next week's show. And we'll talk more about next week's show a little later on. But AEW Rampage, the highs. Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega in a great opener, an incredible first matchup in Rampage history. 15 minutes of these two athletes going back and forth. Christian reversed the one-winged angel, and Omega countered the kill switch. But in the end, Christian picked up one hell of a win and is the new Impact World Heavyweight Champion. Now, these were the factors that AEW meant when they asked AAA not to make Kenny drop the Mega Championship to Andrade, because they didn't want Kenny losing so close together and dropping all of his gold right away. Understandable, but it doesn't take away from Christian becoming, again, the Impact World Heavyweight Champion. Why do I say again? Well, because Christian was the TNA NWA World Heavyweight Champion on 2 occasions, which is what Impact Wrestling is. So, Captain Charisma is back on his throne in Impact, as well as still has a shot against Kenny at All Out in Chicago for that AEW World Heavyweight title. I'm going to be interested to see what happens there. Mark Henry interviews Christian Cage after, and the new champ is humble and gracious in his first interview as Impact Champion. Christian deserves this. The WWE was not using him correctly the last few years. It's good to see AEW push him, and Impact embrace pushing him in this one. Little preview of Fuego del Sol and his road to becoming a contracted AEW star. Nice to see AEW making new stars and giving the youngsters a chance. We then go to Del Sol taking on Miro. This was a 3-minute match, but it was not a squash. Del Sol actually got in a little offense and made the fans get on their feet. In the end, though, Miro proved why he's a beast, and he locked in the game over to make Fuego del Sol tap out. Now, had Fuego del Sol got the win, he would have gotten a contract as well as been the new TNT champion. But that didn't happen. Miro ripped up the contract and walked backstage. Sammy Guevara, along with Tony Khan, come out to the stage. Tony sends Sammy to the ring, and Sammy presents his best friend with an AEW contract because, as Sammy said, sometimes in loss, you actually win a bit more. And I enjoyed that. This was a feel-good moment and was very well done by AEW. And then we get a familiar look at Sting in the rafters on TNT. Kind of gave me chills and made me feel like a kid again, because it has been over 20 years since the Stinger has been in those rafters and awaiting a match, which he will have on AEW Dynamite with 2.0 tag team matchup with Darby Allin as his partner. Mark Henry gets a quick word with Britt Baker and Red Velvet on split screen before their main event. Britt looks pumped, but I do not buy Red Velvet as a serious threat. Maybe it's just me. In my opinion, she needs a little more seasoning, but that's no big deal. Britt Baker then goes one-on-one with Red Velvet in the main event for the women's title. The first few minutes of this match was a little sloppy and felt like neither woman could get out of the blocks, if you understand what I mean. They just seemed like they were kind of wandering. But the last 5 minutes were gold. Red showed her killer instinct, and Britt proved she could adapt and transition into her submission move without using her already broken wrist, transitioned to the other side, and picks up the win in 10 minutes by submission. Chris Statlander came out to aid Red Velvet as Britt was still attacking her. But out of nowhere, Jamie Hayter makes her return to AEW and is now with the good doctor, Britt Baker. 2 great opening matches with the Impact World title match and the TNT match. A decent women's title match. Like I said, the first 3 minutes was a little sloppy, but it was no big deal because they finally got to it and had a really good last few minutes. There was only one low on this entire show, in my opinion. The lows: too many announcers. We do not need a four-man announce team. And as great as Jericho is, it ruined the ending of Dynamite and him taking that beatdown from Wardlow and MJF. Taz is horrible on commentary, and Mark Henry was better in the backstage area interviewing the people. They need to cut this to a two-man announce team, allow it to be Excalibur, and either give him the Big Show, Tony Schiavone, or JR. If JR is too much of a liability, then give him anybody else, but he does not need three other men with him in that booth. Rampage was great in its debut, though. I cannot wait for tonight's episode because there is a lot going on. Will CM Punk return and make his debut in AEW? Will Bryan Danielson? Could we see someone else pop up? Is this all a big ruse? Who knows? But there's a lot going on in the wrestling world and a lot giving us that good feeling about being a fan again. And now the NXT review, as brought to you by If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking. The highs. Roderick Strong comes to the ring and his manager, Malcolm Bivens, leaves an open challenge. And it is answered by Ilja Dragunov. Well, NXT is out to prove that they aren't dead, yet at least. Great opening match between two heavy hitters, and it was great start with both men trading right hands and hard shots. Dragunov got busted open, and Strong stayed onto his opponent, but Dragunov made a hell of a comeback and used a stiff European uppercut to get the win in a 15-minute battle. Like I said, NXT has kind of been back and forth on what's going to happen. Are they getting rebooted? Will it now become once again a developmental program? But I think their core stars are going to show us they're not developmental. They are the real deal. Dragunov calls out Walter with some passion, and he doesn't appear. We move to outside where Samoa Joe is making his way into the arena, and it's time to get ready for Cole and O'Reilly in a vignette about their entire feud coming up next. Hollywood-style vignette for Cole and O'Reilly. I wouldn't be surprised if they steal the show this Sunday at TakeOver. Yes, this Saturday is SummerSlam. This Sunday is TakeOver. There's a lot going on in the wrestling world, like I said. Both men gave their 2 cents about what's going to happen this Sunday. And in my opinion, it should be Kyle O'Reilly going over because Adam Cole loses nothing by putting his former partner over. Hit Row comes out, and Escobar and Swerve begin calling each other out. Escobar on the screen, Swerve in the ring. Escobar immediately says he is challenging Swerve to a fight in the parking lot. That's fine. Swerve goes outside. It's an obvious trap, but it makes for an incredible gang fight in the parking lot, which the Creative Crew wins. And oh goody, Swerve got his grill back. Not the worst, not the best, but still decently good here to get more development behind this feud. LA Knight lets Cameron Grimes know that he'll be fighting Josh Briggs tonight. This should actually be a pretty good match. Imperium talks down to MSK, and they say that they'll be taking the tag team titles later on tonight in our main event. And when we get back to the ringside area, MDM is with the commentary team. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, on commentary or anywhere near NXT is good TV to me. Cameron Grimes comes out to the ring. He will be fighting the big man, Josh Briggs. And Briggs just manhandles Cameron Grimes throughout this entire match. LA Knight is giddy. And MDM, the $1 Million Man, says, let's bet 10 grand. He thinks Cameron Grimes is going to win. LA Knight says, no problem, because Briggs will win with no issue. But Briggs wouldn't let up, and I think LA Knight's got it in the bag. But then, boom, Grimes makes a hell of a turn and picks up the win, and a 10K win for MDM at the 7-minute mark. Knight attacks Grimes and after the match and says he's ready for TakeOver. We then see Gargano backstage along with Candice LeRae, and Indy Hartwell fills them in on what's been going on with her and Dexter Loomis until Loomis pops up. Always loving these little backstage things with Johnny and Candice because they are so upset about Indy being in this relationship with Dexter. It'll be interesting to see what happens next. We get Robert Stone and Jessica May taking on Dexter Loomis and Indy Hartwell in a mixed tag match, starting with a little bit of comedy. And Stone tried to leave the ring only to have Frankie Monet say no and throw him right back into the ring. Dexter and Indy take it to Stone and Jesse for a second, but Frankie gives a hand and it stops and is dragged into the ring by Dexter Loomis. Frankie Monet is an incredible wrestler, athlete, and if she's mixed with this little bit of comedy, it's no big deal. It will not hurt her. We come back from a commercial break, and Stone and Jesse are beating down Indy and Dexter. But then Stone decides to pull a Wile E. Coyote and jump off the top rope and onto the floor, hitting nothing. Loomis locks in his submission on the outside to Stone, while Indy locks in that same submission to Jesse and picks up a submission win in 13 minutes. Good match with a nice mix of comedy here. It's what I like to see. If you're going to do it the right way. After the match, Indy looks for a word of encouragement from Beth Phoenix, and then she proposes to Dexter Loomis. So it looks like Indy Hartwell and Dexter Loomis will be getting married no matter what Johnny and Candice have to say. This just went from really good to epic, in my opinion. The storytelling here has been hilarious and great at the same time. Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez trade promos before their match this Saturday, and both are showing the perfect amount of passion here tonight. Raquel is turning it up a notch, realizing she's got the size advantage, but she knows what Dakota Kai is going to bring into this matchup. And Dakota Kai, knowing she pretty much knows Raquel like the back of her own hand, is going to show her that she could be a serious threat to the women's title. We then go to the final semifinals match of the breakout tournament, Carmelo Hayes versus Hudson. And they get a nice feeling out process between these two, and then Hudson takes a slight lead with his size advantage. But Hayes uses his speed and quickness and now has the upper hand. Hayes shows some innovative offense and has got Hudson guessing at every turn. Hayes goes to the air and hits a huge leg drop on a standing Hudson, picks up the win in a 20-minute masterpiece, in my opinion. Carmelo Hayes is going to the finals to take on Odyssey Jones in the Breakout Star tournament. And if you remember when this all started, I picked Hayes to win it all, so it's great to see him in the finals. Hayes cuts a promo, and his finals opponent, Odyssey Jones, comes out. They talk for the first time, and these two should have a banger of a match next week on NXT. I don't know who JC James is, but I like her. NXT's women's division needs new stars, and I think her and Gigi Dolan are exactly that shot in the arm that this division needs. Cameron Grimes gets a much-needed pep talk from MDM, and this will always be my favorite storyline in NXT because you've got Ted DiBiase pumping up this kid who was kind of out for him in the early going. Ted said he wanted LA Knight to win. Knight won. Knight turned on MDM, and now you got a very humble Ted DiBiase trying to pump up Cameron Grimes, and it's just perfect. And then it is main event time, ladies and gentlemen. MSK versus Imperium for the NXT Tag Team titles. And Imperium takes an early lead. And although MSK is trying to outsmart Imperium, it just seems like they cannot do it. Imperium uses their brute force and get quite a few near falls. The head scissors into that ankle lock by the member of Imperium, I believe it was, what is his name? I cannot remember these guys' names because they don't say them enough. I believe it's Marcel, but you got a head scissors about to go on. He applies an ankle lock and almost actually gets a near tap out victory. Was unbelievable, and MSK finally got lucky to get some distance. MSK picked up the win with their tag team finisher and retained their tag titles in about 15 minutes to end out the show, or at least we thought so, because now here comes out Walter. He attacks MSK. This brought out Dragunov, who thought he was going to once again one up the UK champion, but no, 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 no. Walter isn't having it. He leaves everybody laying and beats down Ilja to end the show. We then have Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland. Uh, excuse me, not to end the show. My bad. Forget I said that. That was our main event match of the evening. We still have two more in between segments. Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland put Ciampa and Thatcher on notice, and that's followed up with a rundown of this Sunday's card at Takeover. And then we shifted to the face-to-face meeting between Samoa Joe and Karrion Kross. I've been waiting for this all night. Kross and Joe waste little time, though. Joe hits the ring, calls Kross out. Here comes Kross. He talks as he walks to the ring, and then these guys just go into a brawl. It's not just any brawl. They fight all around the arena until they put each other to the ringside barricade. Both men are left laying, and that is how we end NXT. I'm sorry for my premature ending before. It's only the first time it's happened. It will never happen again, I promise. The lows of this show. Zoe Stark and Io Shirai popping up out of nowhere when they have not been on TV in months. I think over a month. I forgot they were even the women's tag team champions. The Diamond Mine unnecessary promo in the middle of the show. Malcolm Bivens saying that the match with Dragunov should have never have counted and take place makes no sense. Dragunov is fighting for the UK title. Roderick Strong wants to be a serious threat to any title. Why would you say that match didn't count? I get it. It's a heel tactic, but it's BS. It shouldn't have happened. And that's it. Just two lows for this show. NXT was good. Not great, but if I had to give it a grade, I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. And I'd be giving Rampage a 4 out of 5, in my opinion. Yes, I'm saying Rampage was better, maybe because it was only an hour, but it just seemed like NXT was once again more speaking and vignettes and backstage promos than wrestling. And that now brings us to AEW Dynamite. We open up with a rundown of tonight's show, and Moxley and Kingston are making their way to the ring for a promo. They get attacked by 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, and this is done to prompt Sting and Darby Allin to have their street fight with them now instead of later. At least this is getting new guys over. It's getting them some TV time and some heat. Sting and Darby Allin versus 2.0. Dual Stinger splashes from Darby and Sting. 2.0 are down and out. A little brawling in the crowd leads us back into the ring, and Sting applies a double Scorpion Deathlock to get the submission win. Tap out by 2.0 at the 7-minute mark. This was a good opening match, and Sting and Darby were absolutely great. We then see a clip from earlier where Sammy Guevara's huge announcement that they've been promoting all week long is him proposing marriage to his longtime girlfriend, and she accepts. Backstage, Sean Spears finds this very funny, and wow, it just occurred to me, 2 marriage proposals on 2 different shows. I guess we're setting up for some weddings in the wrestling world yet again. Then we go to Sammy Guevara versus Sean Spears. Match starts on the ramp. These two are just brawling and, laying in some deep right hands. And this is followed up by a leap of faith by Sammy Guevara onto Sean Spears. Tully Blanchard gets involved, and that gives Spears the upper hand. And both men get in the ring, and the bell sounds, and damn, the first 3 minutes, and this wasn't even the official match. Tully gets ejected from ringside, and this may have saved Sammy. Sean and Sammy trade shots, and we go back and forth until Guevara hits his GTH and gets the win in a 13-minute match. Incredible match between these two. They've never had better. They always have good matches, but they have never had better up until this point. Great way to, I hope, end this feud and move them both on to something even better. We're about to hear from the new Impact champion, Christian Cage, but Don Callis interrupts and is being his annoying self. Christian cuts Don off and lets him know he is just a carny piece of shit. I love that line from Christian. I hope it goes on a shirt one day. Can't wait for Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega Part 2 at All Out in Chicago, September 5th. It should be another great matchup. And we get a quick look at Dante Martin and his tremendous outing last week in that six-man tag. This kid is going to be huge down the road. You mark my words. Dante Martin could be a threat to any title given the right amount of time for him to hone his craft and continue to do what he's doing. Lance Archer coming out to kill Dan Lambert was about to be great, but then he gets attacked by Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. I'm interested to see where this is going, and more on Lambert later. We shift to Chris Jericho cutting an intense promo on MJF and route to their main event later on this evening. This has been a great ongoing story, and the labors of Jericho have been perfectly done well. It's going to be good to see what happens here in our main event, and will they finally end this feud and possibly send Maxwell Jacob Friedman to another feud, or will they continue going between him and Jericho? Either way, I'm fine with it. Jurassic Express taking on the Young Bucks for the World Tag Team titles. Match starts off with both teams trying to read one another, going back and forth here, but the match explodes after a huge head scissors to the outside from Jungle Boy to Nick Jackson. Jungle Boy kicks out of the Indie Taker and keeps the match going. A brainbuster on the chair from Jungle Boy to Matt Jackson, and it only gets a two. And then, wow, double team move finish from the Jurassic Express, and that still only gets a two. Great reversal by the Bucks into the BTE trigger on Jungle Boy, and the Bucks retain the World Tag Team titles in the 15-minute mark. What a great match between these two teams. Jurassic Express continues to get their exposure and learn and move up the ladder, and the Young Bucks continue to prove that they can have good matches with people. It doesn't always just have to be super kicks and flippy shit. They can actually have a wrestling match. After the match, Omega and the Elite take out Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus, looking to get an upper hand going into All Out. Also, Omega is wearing a Chick Magnet shirt. Is this a clue? Who knows? The good Dr. Britt Baker introduces her new enforcer, Jamie Hayter, and her challenge from Hayter is to Red Velvet for next week. Now, that would be an interesting match. Jamie Hayter showed so much raw power and physical presence in her Rampage debut last week. So her against Red Velvet, I'd really like to see what would happen. And I think if this leads to her versus Chris Statlander, then I'm ready for it. Paul White comes out to cut a promo about saving Tony Schiavone and his son last week, but QT Marshall cuts him off and shows pictures of Show's surgically repaired hip. Show says that doesn't do anything but fire him up, and he challenges QT Marshall to a match at All Out on September 5th. Now, when Paul White debuted, we thought he wouldn't get into the ring. But, hey, I hope this is what finally shuts QT Marshall up once and for all. Maybe gets him off my television, but who knows. Backstage, the Elite find out that there will be a tag team eliminator tournament that will get them number one contenders. It'll either be Jurassic Express, the Lucha Bros, the Varsity Blondes. It could be any of those teams. The winning team of the tournament will face the Bucks at All Out in a steel cage match. That should be very interesting. Part of me wants it to be the Lucha Bros because I'd like to see them with the tag titles. Part of me wants it to be the Varsity Blondes because I want to see Brian Pillman Jr. once again in a high main event caliber match. And another part of me wants it to be Lucha Express because I think they deserve the belts as well. But we shall see. Backstage, Pac and the Lucha Bros are answering the challenge of Andrade, and El Idolo shows up. And a little back and forth goes on here, and then we find out it will be Pac versus Andrade at All Out. All Out is looking to be as big as possible, and I'm all for it. I hope you are as well, fans. I'm definitely all for it. We then get Penelope Ford versus Thunder Rosa. A couple of missed spots by Penelope to start things off, but Rosa gets the upper hand and calms things down. Ford reverses Thunder on the outside and sends her into the ring post. Ford kept control for a good while, but Thunder made a good comeback, and both women traded pinfalls. Thunder Rosa turned an Indian deathlock into a great-looking head-and-arm submission move and gets the tap-out victory in 12 minutes. Thunder Rosa continues to have an incredible whenever she gets in the ring, no matter who's with, no matter what show it's on. She's been in Impact, she's been in NWA, and now she's still with AEW. So She's doing all she can to make every women's division shine. And I hope, even though I'm not all for it with the whole NWA Empower thing going on, I hope she's the one that comes out on the winning end of that tournament. We hear from Arn and Brock Anderson, and we find out that Brock Anderson has challenged Malachi Black next week in order to vindicate what happened to his father a couple of weeks back. This may not be good, and I'm worried about Brock. He's very young, very green. Of course, Cody is nowhere to be found. So it's really gonna, is this gonna hurt this young man? Is it possibly gonna take him out of TV? Who knows? Arn definitely doesn't seem happy about it. John Moxley then proceeds to cut what looks to be a coke-induced and paranoid-filled promo, but I'm for it. He talks about everybody wanting to deal with AEW, but nobody wanting to deal with them when he was the champion and during the dark times and empty arenas. And I get it, John. You were carrying the company during the whole pandemic, but you're still a part of the company and you're still doing a great job. You're acting like somebody told you to go sit in the bleachers and not talk. And then it is main event time, ladies and gentlemen. Jericho versus MJF, and the crowd singing Judas and Jericho to the ring because he could not have it actually be his entrance music was fantastic. It was everything I expected it to be. This turns into a fight immediately. MJF gets the early control. He beats Jericho down at ringside and in the ring, but Jericho finally makes somewhat of a comeback. Jericho may be out of shape, but he can still do a hell of a lionsault. MJF reverses Jericho into an armbar and is putting him through some pain until a nice switch by Jericho into the walls of Jericho. MJF quickly recovers, and we're back at even. Low blow by MJF, and he now has his own version of the walls of Jericho on Chris, but Chris turns it around. MJF with a Judas effect of his own. Jericho counters into a 2 count, but MJF goes back to his arm, and Jericho finally taps after a 16-minute match. And this was the best main event I've seen in a long time. I don't care what show it is, Dynamite or NXT. Rampage is too new for me to say that. Great main event between two men who have done everything they can to make this company what it is. Now, like I said earlier, I don't know if that means this is the end of the MJF Jericho feud or what, but it'll be interesting to see. Will Jericho be off TV for a little while? Will MJF move up now and possibly challenge for a title? What's going to happen between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle? We'll have to wait and see. And now for the lows. Remember, I said we'd come back to Dan Lambert a little later on, and him being on Dynamite, it's just not working for me. It didn't work on Impact. It's not working in MLW, and it's not going to work here. No matter what UFC fighters he brings to the ring, no matter what AEW wrestlers he's going to have behind him, whether if that's why Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page came out and took out Lance Archer, it's just not working. Dan Lambert sucks. Okay? He's the American Top Team coach. He's not a promoter. He's not a wrestler. He is not a manager. There is no reason for him to be in the ring cutting a promo. Please, AEW, stop it before it gets worse. Promo from Matt Hardy, and it just wasn't needed. Matt is still trying to get over this Money Matt character that he was trying to get over in Impact Wrestling a few years ago. I don't know why we left the delete behind what went on there. Why he could have still been a heel, but this big Money Matt thing and the House of Art, it's bullshit. Jade Cargill continued her backstage promos. Her and Sterling haven't been in the ring for a match in what seems like 2 months. But apparently she'll be fighting Kiera Hogan on Rampage this week. Hopefully it'll be the botch fest that I know it will be. And finally, Taz and Goldberg's son, Gage, introduces the made-up FTW champion, Ricky Starks. And this all leads to Brian Cage being beaten down by Will Hobbs and then them fighting backstage and Ricky Starks running off like a scared shitless heel. These are all things that just didn't need to happen. I mean, you have Ricky Starks wrestle if you're going to want him on the show and have Brian Cage try to get to him. Make Jade Cargill wrestle now on Dynamite and, cut some of the promos. But Dynamite, still fantastic, still a great show. I would give it also a 4 out of 5. It was better than NXT this week, in my opinion, because there were a lot of great matches on it. It wasn't just all talking. And even though my little rant there about the couple of things I didn't like, there was still a lot more that outweighed the bad. So that's going to do it for us this week. But before I sign off, we're going to speak about what will be going on next week. And later on tonight, we have Rampage. Saturday, we have WWE SummerSlam. And Sunday, we have NXT TakeOver. Next week on this show, I will be reviewing Rampage, SummerSlam, and TakeOver. There will be no regular NXT or AEW Dynamite reviews next week. You will hear about what went on Rampage. I'm hoping it's what we're hoping for. What went on at SummerSlam and what's going to happen at TakeOver, as well as the quick hits. And I promise you, because I don't have a rant planned out this week because of how much I ranted just now about AEW, next week, what grinds my gears will be back as well. So I want to thank you guys for joining me as always. Continue to support the WrestleNet Radio and all of our shows, the We Can't Wrestle podcast, Maximum Gold, The Year That Was, Slice of Life, If You Smell What the Arch Is Cooking, and all the new things that we've got going on here on WrestleNet Radio. Until next week, I will see you then on If You Smell What the Arch Is Cooking.